First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, Ba'Shem Rakal Kadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who are teaching this truth in sincerity. And a shout out to Yakim that's out there on the four quarters of the earth proclaiming this truth. As we are nearing the end, you can see, though, that the 10 horns shall hate the whore, which is the EU. U.S. slaps Europe, Canada, and Mexico with steel aluminum tariffs. We had warned that this one was coming, and so unable to win concessions from its trading partners ahead of the Friday deadline, the U.S. introduced tariffs on steel aluminum imports from Canada, Mexico, and the European Union, which is the 10 horns. The new 25% tariff on steel imports and 10% tariff on aluminum imports from the EU, Canada, and Mexico come into force at midnight, which is 4 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time on Friday. So, technically our time, it's already happened, according to U.S. Commerce Secretary Ross. So, this is going to definitely get them to hate the whore. You start fucking with their money. As another brother had already put it in a video. So, we got that going on here, and so there's more. Bad day for world trade. Brussels vows to retaliate against U.S. tariffs in coming hours, so there will be retaliation for this. The EU, which is the 10 horns, will introduce swift counterbalancing measures to steel and aluminum tariffs imposed by the United States, according to the President of the European Commission, Jean-Claude Juncker. This is a bad day for world trade, so we will immediately introduce a settlement dispute with the World Trade Organization and will announce counterbalancing measures in the coming hours. Juncker said in a speech in Brussels, "It is totally unacceptable that a country is opposing unilateral measures when it comes to world trade." And these are supposed to be America's allies, but the deep state Amalek is fucking off the allies, because all Donald Trump is a holding company for the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, the Amalekites. The response followed Washington's decision on Thursday to impose a 25% tariff on steel imports and a 10% tariff on all aluminum imports from the EU, Canada, and Mexico. The countries had been granted a temporary exemption from the tariffs introduced by the Fuck House, that's what I call it. On March 1, the metal tariffs will come into force at midnight, 4 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time, Friday. So, again, the U.S. is messing with the 10 horns, and isn't this a good thing? But wait, there's more. See if this motherfucker will load. Goddamn Esau. Okay, well, we know that Bashar al-Assad has been speaking, and I have some of the interview, which I'll be playing in just a short minute here. But this is coming from RT, which it was an RT interview. No answer to Animal Assad. In other words, remember when Donald Trump tweeted just right before he bombed Syria, saying that you want to, he was tweeting Trump, or tweeting Putin, is saying that you support that gas-killing animal. No answer to Animal. Assad's Syrian leader tells RT he does not have insulting nickname for Donald Trump. Yes, because Bashar al-Assad, believe it or not, even though he's demonized in front of everybody, he's actually kind of a gentleman. He pretty much has been, kind of, been the gentleman. He just. He doesn't react. It's the same thing with Vladimir Putin. They don't react and shout out all this, vulgarity towards one another. No, they just, they've been exposing Esau, the so-called white man, for a while, even though we know Putin's a Edomite. But, either way, they've been exposing America. U.S. President Donald Trump infamously called his Syrian counterpart Animal Assad in one of his tweets when he asked whether it was a nickname for Trump. Assad told RT he does not use such language. This is not my language, so I cannot use similar language. This is his language. It represents him, Bashar al-Assad said in an interview with RT which will be shown in full on Thursday at 11:30 Greenwich Mean Time. And I do have that interview, but we're going to get to the highlights of that interview because it's like almost a half hour. Can't do that in a 15-minute thing. We were close to direct conflict between Russia and U.S. inside Syria, Bashar al-Assad also said in the interview. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad says Moscow deterred the West from launching a devastating countrywide airstrike last month and believes that Damascus has nearly won the 7-year war despite the continued United States interference. With every move toward the Syrian Arab army and for the political process and for the whole situation, our enemies and our opponents, mainly the West, led by the United States and their puppets in Europe and in our region, then try to make it farther, either by supporting more terrorism, bringing in more terrorists to Syria, or by hindering the political process, Bashar al-Assad told RT correspondent Murad during a sit-down interview in Damascus, noting that without outside funding, his opponents inside the country could not be, or without funding, his opponents could be subdued within a year. So again, the United States wants to make sure that he doesn't regain power of the country. And so there's more. Okay, first and foremost, I'm going to play the video about the tariffs and then go into what Bashar al-Assad has said. And make a note that AMTV is like freaking out over what he said because, of course, they're going to really play this one out because, of course, Bashar al-Assad that says the United States must leave Syria or else they will remove by force. Shalom. So here's the part about the tariffs.
The US has announced it will slap the EU with tariffs on aluminium and steel imports, with the measures coming into effect on Friday. Canada and Mexico will also be hit. Donald Trump first announced the global tariffs back in March, but in a concession to allies, including the EU, certain exemptions were granted, although they've now been removed. So let's get the latest from Samira Khan. She joins us from Washington. Good evening, Samira. Has there been much reaction then to this decision by Donald Trump?
Well, the Secretary for Commerce announced the tariffs after meeting with the French finance minister, and the tariffs reportedly threaten billions worth of European exports to the U.S. The EU is understandably outraged, and they called it a horrible day for trade. Let's take a look.
It is a bad day for world trade. It is totally unacceptable that a country is imposing unilateral measures when it comes to world trade.
As for the measures, Brussels has previously promised to retaliate with 25% tariffs on U.S. products like motorcycles, jeans, cigarettes, cranberry juice, and peanut butter. Let's take a quick look.
So now we will also impose import tariffs. This is basically a stupid process. The fact that we have to do this. But we have to do it. We will now impose tariffs on motorcycles, Harley-Davidson, on blue jeans, Levi's, on bourbon. We can also do stupid. We also have to be this stupid.
Now, the Secretary for Commerce has downplayed the tariffs, so it seems like it won't really affect U.S.-EU relations, but we'll just have to see what happens and if the EU decides to retaliate.
Oh, you could best believe it because I already read the article. All right, let's go to Bashar al-Assad.
Now, beginning with Syria, the president of that country says that the United States must leave, as the Syrian people will no longer accept illegal foreign presence in that country. In an interview with Russia Today, Assad said that the West, led by the U.S. and its regional allies, have left no stone unturned to inflame terrorism and hinder political process. He also held Russia for restraining Washington's meddling in the region and deterring the West from launching a devastating war on Syria. Assad said the Syrian army's repeated gains show that Washington is losing its militant cards. He added that the Syrian army will liberate areas held by U.S.-backed SDF militants if they do not opt for negotiations. Assad also called for improved air defenses to stop the repeated Israeli aggression against this country. The Syrian president also responded to a remark made by his U.S. counterpart that referred him as, quote, Animal Assad.
This is not my language, so I cannot use similar language. This is his language. It represents him. I think there's a very known principle that what you say is what you are. So he wanted to present what he is.
Assad stressed that Trump's invention of an insulting nickname didn't really matter. He said the opinion of the people adhering to moral and ethical principles mattered to him, not the ones like Trump. He added that somebody like Trump will change nothing for him and that he would not retaliate with insults. Trump made a remark on Assad in a tweet back in April and blamed him for the alleged use of chemical weapons in Syria. Damascus has strongly denied the allegations. Now from San Francisco, let's bring in Scott Bennett, who is a former U.S. Army psychological warfare officer. Good to have you with us, sir. Why does President Assad of Syria want U.S. boots out of his country, you think?
Well, because it's a war crime. It's an act of war. It's an invasion. Any U.S. troop, any military, any American military, any foreign military that is on the land of Bashar Assad of Syria is invading the country, and it is a war crime, and it should be brought up in the International Criminal Court and the United Nations Security Council as such. Russia is there by invitation. Iran is there by invitation, and they are fighting the terrorists, which the American people thought and were deceived into believing that the Americans were fighting, where the opposite is true. I think President Bashar Assad's interview is profoundly moving and very accurate, and I support him wholeheartedly, as do many in the American military and the American political leadership, such as Senator Dick Black and Tulsi Gabbard and many others who know Syria, who know the conflict, and know Israel and the United States and the entire history of Saudi Arabia being the prime source of the mercenary terrorists. So the biggest opportunity that Bashar Assad has is when he asks the question, how do we close the gap between their plans and our plans, it's very simple. President Bashar Assad has to engage in a massive public relations campaign and information operations campaign to win the American people, to show the American people they've been lied to, they've been deceived, they've been fighting for terrorism and financing terrorism and killing their own children in uniform by arming these terrorists. The American people are very ignorant of this fact. They, in fact, have been sorely deceived by Israel, and, in fact, they need to also remind President Trump that he made promises to remove American forces from Syria. He tweeted about it. He communicated endlessly on the campaign trail. So either he's a liar and a hypocrite, or he's simply forgotten or been deceived or bullied or pushed into making...
Which we know that Donald Trump is a piece of shit. He was a part of the deep state all along.
Very diplomatic, but very forceful, and communicate to the European people and the Americans that the American leadership has launched and started this war recklessly, and now it's coming to an end. And I think Bashar Assad is very wise to the fact that he wants to bring the West to the negotiating table, but he cannot accept anything less than absolute reconquest of his own country. He has to expel every disease of terrorism that has infected his body politic, and Russia and Iran are helping him do that.
So you just call it American terrorism. I'm going to continue with the Chris Green AMTV, and it's probably Chad, but I'm going to continue the second part of this to show how they're freaking out because, of course, Bashar al-Assad is saying, hey, these terrorists, these American-supported terrorists, which is the United States occupation, must leave Syria or be removed. Shalom. Until next video.